To stand out in a sea of small crossovers takes at least some kind of defining character. Like, nobody's going to describe the Toyota RAV4 as exciting, but just about everybody knows it has a reputation for reliability. Subaru's got the sensible corner of the market covered with the Forester and the Outback, and the list goes on. So where does that leave the Chevrolet Equinox? Well, after years of being sort of ordinary, it suddenly just might be the most stylish entry in this segment. Even better, there are two distinct ways you can get it depending on which kind of look you're going for. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. Look, sometimes styling defies subjectivity, which I would say is the case here. I really like this redesign. I do prefer the Activ trim, so sort of the adventurous version, over this sporty RS, but they both look good. But if you see that thing in the seafoam green kind of hero color with the white roof and mirror caps, that thing is just fantastic. But this looks good too. This radiant red paint, the black roof and mirror, but even the base LT version looks good. It's a credit to what the designers managed, especially with that C-pillar. It has this sort of shark fin-like shape, and I really dig it. It gives this thing a unique character, and so does the front end. It's very hard to stand out in this segment of sameness, but I think they absolutely nailed the exterior design, and the same goes for the cabin, again, in RS or Activ trims. I happen to prefer the Activ because of the tan interior, but this one looks good too. I like the contrasting red and blue accents, the stitching, as well as on the shoulders of these seats. It's very cool, and I love these vent bezels, as well as this plastic strip that runs across the dash pad. It's just very cool, subtle touches that help this thing stand out. You know, just overall, this cabin is a big departure from the old Equinox, which really looked like it was stuck in a decade-old design language, mostly because it was, but this is very modern. But I also like that, yes, you do get kind of the latest amenities, like these screens in here, but then it's also that nice balance between cutting edge and elementary. So there are still a ton of physical controls, which are just way easier to use than the stuff that's integrated into the touchscreen, especially when it comes to the climate system. You can look down here, you can see these dedicated displays in the temperature dials, but there are buttons that are clearly labeled. You know exactly what you're doing, and it's easy to train your muscle memory. So you can reach over, hit the button for your heated seat, and know without looking what you are doing. That is absolutely awesome to see, even in such a modern vehicle. Now, something else you might notice in here is this column shifter, which I do like because it cleans up the clutter down here on the console. Although I have a feeling it might have been an afterthought, especially when you see this drive mode dial here that's very oversized with very tiny font on the top, and it's kind of useless. There are 3 different settings that you can toggle between: off-road, normal, and snow and ice. But really, I don't think it's necessary, and it does strike me as something that was maybe supposed to be a conventional shifter like the old one, or a rotary dial down here on the console, and then they decided to go with the column shifter that's used in some of the EV models like the Blazer and the Equinox EV, but GM decided to stick with that instead, and it just doesn't really look right. But I do like the way this one works once you get the hang of it. I also really like the placement of this wireless phone charger. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan, especially with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, because I find phone batteries drain faster than they recharge being in a wireless charger. But I like that it's this sort of cradle at the end of the console, and it means it's very easy to drop your phone in and you won't forget it as you are getting out. That part is very cool. Look, there's no way to sugarcoat the fact that there is not as much cargo room in here as you can get in the RAV4 or the Honda CR-V. You get 845 liters behind the back seats and then about 1,800 with them folded. That's a couple hundred less than in both of those competitors. Another problem I have, when you fold the back seats, they don't actually go completely flat, and that is a problem if you are loading this thing with bulky items. It means you have to lift and shift, and if you're by yourself, you are going to run into problems. I also don't love how tall the lift over height is. It's definitely taller than the CR-Vs. Again, another problem when you're loading this thing up. But when it comes to people, there's plenty of room for 4 full-grown adults inside. I also really appreciate just how wide these doors open. It means whether you're climbing in yourself or you're helping get little ones buckled in and out of their car seats, it's the sort of feature you're going to notice and appreciate every single day. Now, something else you will notice every day, the expanse of screens in here. Although I want to get out ahead of that and say that despite how much real estate there is, it's not all that distracting because they are mounted nice and low on the dash. So you really do focus on the road ahead. They're not even really in your periphery. That is the way it's supposed to be done. And Chevy's interior designers absolutely nailed this interface. You get this, I don't know, 11.3 inch touchscreen as well as an 11-inch driver display. The cool thing is they run a Google-based operating system that has a learning curve that's about as flat as a prairie plain. It doesn't matter if you've never actually used this before because it is very straightforward. It's a good example of why automakers should trust companies like Google that know user experience way better than they do to develop systems like this. Something else I really appreciate, not only is Google Maps integrated as the kind of built-in navigation system, but you can toggle between having it on the touchscreen or on the driver display. So if you're in unfamiliar territory, you can just quickly glance down and see your turn-by-turn directions right here in front of you. That is very key. But then again, if you want to keep it on the touchscreen, you can do that. You can also have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto hooked up wirelessly. You can run your Google Maps that way, but if you are logged into your Google account, you can have directions on your phone and then have them right there in your history, saved routes, all that good stuff that you get with a Google account, you have right here in your vehicle, and that is very handy. All right, now I know I talked about how much I like the look of those C-pillars, but I will say they cut into the outward visibility. The rear 3/4 view is just a little compromised if you're shoulder checking. That's not so great, but the forward visibility is, and that's a credit to the tall seating position in here. The way the hood frames the road ahead of you means you're not going to have to worry about misjudging the corners of the vehicle. Something else GM deserves a shout out for, the HD cameras that, yes, they are optional, but for the $1,300 they cost as part of this safety package, well worth the money. The quality, the resolution, absolutely fantastic. And since we're talking about pricing, let's talk about how much this vehicle costs. And that would be about $35,900 to start before tax in Canada. That's for the base LT trim, but that is front wheel drive. If you want all wheel drive, it's going to cost you about $2,300 more. And then you're going to pay about 43 grand before freight and tax for the Activ or RS trim. Same price for either of them. Options are pretty limited. So you have that safety package I talked about, this big panoramic sunroof that's about $1,600, and then a package that's $1,100, and that gets you ventilated front seats, heated rear seats. It's all pretty straightforward. It also remains competitive with vehicles like the Toyota RAV4 or the Honda CR-V, but here is a big problem. No hybrid powertrain here, which both of those vehicles offer, as well as the Ford Escape, Hyundai Tucson, Kia Sportage, Mazda CX-50, Subaru Forester. It's all really leaving this one behind when it comes to efficiency. Now, officially, the all-wheel drive Equinox is rated to burn 9.2 liters per 100 kilometers combined, which is worse than just about every all-wheel drive crossover it competes with. And in fairness, I had it down to about 7.9 the other day when I did my usual 200 kilometer evaluation loop that, yes, is highway heavy, but here's the other caveat. I had it in front-wheel drive, not all-wheel drive. That was a big game changer, and I decided to do a little experiment today. So I set it to all-wheel drive, I reset trip 2, and already it's up to 10.8 over about 55 kilometers. So it does make a big difference having four-wheel traction versus two. It's also a little weird that you can activate the system because most other automakers, they just use automatic all-wheel drive systems that run in front-wheel drive, and then when they detect wheel spin, they send some power to the rear wheels. I don't really understand why GM gives you this option, because when you need traction, if it's not engaged, you don't have it. You have to go out of your way to hit this button over here by your left knee. So I don't love that, and I don't love the penalty that comes with it at the pumps. The other thing I want to talk about, pretty small fuel tank, 59 liters. So that would give you an effective cruising range of 640 kilometers if you hit that 9.2. But let's be honest, you're probably looking at between 500 and 550 kilometers on a full tank, which isn't all that great. Lots of competitors do have bigger fuel tanks in the 70 to 75 liter range. That makes this one quite small, and it's a matter that is made worse by how relatively inefficient it is. Now, in terms of the engine, it's a 1.5 liter four-cylinder that is turbocharged. It makes 175 horsepower, 203 pound-feet of torque, and quite honestly, I don't think this thing needs any more output. When you get your foot down, it doesn't sound all that great, but it does the job. Passing maneuvers, that is a big one, and it never really feels flat-footed. Here is the bigger issue I have: the 8-speed automatic transmission that's paired with that motor. And it's not all the time. If you very smoothly roll onto the throttle, it's great. But I don't know, if you're, let's say, rolling away from a stop on a congested road, let's say the light has just turned green, but not everyone's accelerating at the same rate, so you're kind of inconsistent, that's where you're going to notice problems. It's like the transmission doesn't know what it wants to do. It gets caught between gears. That's a little bit of a problem, not major. It also seems to be at least a little bit better with all-wheel drive engaged, which is worth pointing out if nothing else. Now, I also like the steering that has progressive resistance. So as your speed increases, you'll notice just a little bit more weight. It's not a lot, it's not sporty, but it means it requires deliberate inputs to change direction. And that's what you want. You can also tell which direction the front wheels are pointed, which, if you do lose traction, is very helpful. Too many crossovers this size have very vague steering, so I like this. Ride quality, pretty good too. It's that typical GM softness. Feels maybe a little tired even when it's brand new. And I'll say, I don't know if it's a result of these 19-inch wheels that the RS trim rides on, but deeper cracks and potholes in the pavement, well, they're more noticeable than I would like, but it's really not that bad. This is a pretty easy vehicle to get along with. Nice and comfortable cruising around. These seats are great. And then in terms of amenities, all the stuff you would expect is here, even in the base trim, but especially if you shell out for this RS or that Activ version that I love so much. So it's all pretty straightforward. You have advanced safety features, blind spot monitoring, lane departure warning and keep assist, forward collision warning, adaptive cruise control. Then when you step up to these higher trims, you get stuff like a power tailgate. You get that standard wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, heated front seats and a heated steering wheel. And then, like I talked about, you have those extras, including the wireless charger that come with the RS and Activ trims, but you can also get it optionally with the base LT with an upgrade package. It's all very straightforward. It makes this thing very easy to get along with. The only thing to me that it's really missing is that hybrid powertrain. To recap, I like the head-turning look of the Equinox, especially in RS or Activ trims, the Google-based interface, and the space inside the cabin. I don't like that there isn't a hybrid powertrain, that the cargo area hasn't exactly been optimized, or the way the transmission behaves sometimes. This is the sort of segment that's exceptionally competitive, and there are plenty of great options to pick from. But where the last Equinox was just sort of so-so, this new one is very stylish and has a great new interface that's super easy to use. Yeah, the cargo area is a little short of the top picks in this segment, and it could stand to benefit from an efficient hybrid powertrain. But if I were shopping in this segment, I'd definitely put the 2025 Equinox on my short list.